Live. All right. Sorry about that. The only way to deal with that was to restart OBS. So I think that has fixed everything. And sometimes you just never know. And maybe that's why Nathaniel was disappearing earlier. Maybe it wasn't the technology. Maybe it was just OBS. Thanks for waiting. And we're going to listen to Gatsky, who has been waiting patiently and giving such good feedback. So I can't wait to hear that next. Oh, now I have no audio. That's fun. Let's fix that. I turned everything off. I did such a good job with turning everything off that now I have to turn everything back on.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I can't even see you in anymore. I can see you in my Twitch menu. Like, I've got the Twitch stream loaded up below, and it's showing us just fine, but I can't see you on the Video Ninja thing. Oh, there we are.
Yeah, I've come back, but now the audio is not coming through, so we get to do an episode of Why Is My Technology? All right, I think I got it. Let's restart that, and let's go. Third time lucky.
Better.
No? My God. The computer is not working. What am I going to do? I got it. It's coming through for me, but I know it's not coming through for you.
Yeah, I can't hear anything either.
Let me just do, I'm going to do a quick Renegade patch. This is the fun part of troubleshooting. We're going to patch this to VB cable. We're going to use a whole other driver. And then we're going to go into the settings, and we are going to set the settings of the audio to, I cannot, let's just.
Who was the last track by again?
The last track was by Nathan Vandenberg.
Rags said something interesting. Personal opinion, I feel like the bass line is really cool, but only barely meshes with the synth. I don't know, the groove fits, but it sounds wrong to me. I think I know what the problem with that is. It's a very sine wavy sounding bass. It's like almost a garage bass, and sort of it's when it needs to be a little bit less of a one, more of a one sort of sound. Play about with your sustain. I think there would be your big one, and allow things to sort of cut off a little bit earlier, because it sort of just gets a bit muddy with the way it sounds, because it's all, again, it's another one of those cases of things bleeding into each other. That's acapella. What's my all-time favorite live show? Unfortunately, I've actually not really had much chance to go to many live shows of anything. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, and there weren't really any shows out there, especially not electronic ones or anything. And then when I did move, I can hear loads of loud stuff now.
Oh, so you're getting it, but they're not. Okay.
Yeah, I know, I'll fix that. But then I came down to Aberdeen, and I was focused entirely on my degree for 7 years and working. So, everyone's saying they are getting the music now. So, they got that, and I got that.
Okay,
so
well,
that's an improvement.
Okay, well, now, it's not showing me that you're getting it, but if OBS is just going to be glitchy, but if it's going to work, then let's just do it. All right, let's kick into Gatsky. I'm just going to trust you if you hear it. Wow, that was a super ride by Gatsky. That I love the energy on that. First of all, I think that sometimes energy is the hardest thing to build. Like it's a lot easier to just have that space and not like know how to do it. And I hear this all the time. I see people kind of having these great ideas but not the momentum. But you really have the momentum. But I agree with some of the other commenters like No Man's Land, that the vocals and the hi-hat both are getting a bit lost. I think again because you have such strong low end and such strong low mids that like no wonder, it's just you have a lot of strong elements and you need to figure out maybe doing some strategic EQing among them, and maybe even like sometimes you can even sidechain the top end just lightly to things like the top end of the bass. And you might not think of that because a lot of people think sidechaining, kick and sub, but sidechaining can be a lot more than that. It can just be really invisible, discrete ways to get something out of the way of something else. But I think that overall, like super solid, super dance floor. I would love to go and party to this. And funny, Nathaniel saying he's never really been to shows. Natty, we are going to meet and we're going to go to shows together.
Yes.
I would love to do that. The first time I met Evelyn was so intense because we went to ADE together. It was like our first time meeting. And then we both went to this massive music festival. And that was the coolest year ever. You remember? Because that was the year that I played at the Owsla party. And
oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. That was so much fun. And everybody on Discord was checking in. And wow, good times. Party track. So, anyways, go ahead.
Gatsky was saying that they recorded it on basically the vocal sample is basically iPhone quality. So there's you have a choice here. Either you can attempt to try cleaning up and make it more understandable, or you lean into the fact that we can't really understand entirely what's being said here. Clip the hell out of it. Turn it into a vocal texture rather than a sample.
Yeah, I agree
with that. And then as long as you're, again, utilizing the sort of multi-band or sidechain sort of things, again, keep that distortion out of the way of the hi-hats, there's still enough room in your track to get away with it.
Yeah. I agree with that too. Yeah, it's a fantastic track though. Good luck with your first show. I'd love to know.
That's exciting.
Yeah, that's so exciting. Who are you opening for? Like, what are you? Are you gonna play like a live set? Are you gonna DJ or like whatever? I mean, Gatsky is saying also that the sample shittiness is partially stylistic, but it also sits in a bad spot. So yeah, I think you can like Nate was saying that you can exaggerate that crappiness, quote unquote, of the sample. Like you can kind of distort it and just make it sound intentional. Yeah, and that's the thing is like as long as it's not actually like distorting and hurting your ears, you can just be like, yeah, I really like this edgy sound. Doing opening for Schlump. Schlump is dope. Old friend from the California days. Tell him Alicia says hi. Super, super great energy. I'm sure he's going to love your music. We got Zine. Okay, it's a YouTube link. I'm going to take a look at it first because we can't play. All right, unlisted. All right, cool. This track is called Summer Vibe. to talk over this a little bit because I think it's a pretty whip. And yeah, so first of all, there's a lot to say about this, but I think maybe you need to just take another crack at the mix. I'm not sure if this is like done or what stage you're in, but this synth is definitely too loud, and the guitar sounds really great, but it's too quiet. So I think there is a balance. There's a balance to be found, and there's just so many things to say, right? I think the lead is too loud. The swooshes are also way too loud. The guitar is like one of the greatest sounding pieces of it, and I love it. Definitely too quiet. So, and the whole thing overall is just a little bit too loopy. Like those piano chords are really nice, but we need some texture. We need some atmosphere. We need some top end. We need just a little bit of filling out of this. Rag says, sounds like a remix from Oregon Trail OST. Feng Shui says, has some tropical house vibes as well. So yeah, this definitely has potential. What do you think, Nadi?
The music that you have when they talk about the sad story about a dog, but how the dog got better when he found a new family and isn't everything okay again. So it's like motivational music, which that imagery in my head just sort of felt a little bit hilarious, especially once people started going the Kygo goes to Africa. that was funny, but I think that the piano needs a lot of work, especially because I mean if you pull up the guitar, you can get away with the piano being more static because it won't be so prominent. But as it is, everything's too on note. A lot of it will be in how you program your MIDI. Start playing about with your sustain pedal. There's a virtual one usually in every MIDI editor. If you can play about with the emphasis of your notes and how they're played, you can make it sound more organic because it's definitely right now it sounds MIDI. The other thing would be to have fills. You know, the piano doesn't have to just do one thing. The player has two hands.
Yeah, exactly.
So what you can do is you can have the chords. You can split them up so they don't have to be within the same octave range all the time. You could have one become the bass note, the other two spread further up, and you can arpeggiate between the two of them. Like 2 or 3 notes or 4 notes or however many up to your, you got your fingers there. So, you can basically add variety while keeping to exactly the same notes by just alternating how you play them.
Very good advice. And I think, it definitely sounds like there's a lot you can do and, enjoy it. Enjoy that you have the foundation of a track and you can now experiment with it.
Have fun with it.
Exactly.
And the fun will show with it as well. The more you're like, yes, this is a really cool effect, the audience will get that too. They'll get the same vibe in the execution of that.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we got No Man's Land up next. Oh, we got a lot of people in the queue. Sorry for all the issues. Hopefully this is the angel of tech will smile on us for our goodwill. We've got No Man's Land with Listen. Oh, really, really unique and original stuff from No Man's Land. Yeah, I really like this panning 8-bit sound here. It's really tasty. I love like the edge to it. I love the way it goes back and forth. Like that's a really masterful texture because it really takes it to an exciting level. And yeah, I also really, really appreciated the stereo so much because I really was feeling a lot going on, but not too much. Like just, I mean, a lot going on. Like this is a really interesting world that you're painting for me. The only thing is sometimes when you get crazy with stereo, you have to really check the master in a stereo imager because to me, it just sounds a tiny bit heavy on one side, like just a little bit. And it needs to, obviously things pan back and forth, but there should be like an overall balance. And I just constantly felt throughout the whole mix that it was just like a little bit askew. And that just could be from like maybe you have too many elements that are slightly on the right. I do this all the time too, so don't worry because I love penning and stuff. But that was the only thing, and it was just a tiny thing. But I really loved like the drop is really good. I think that I want that 8-bit to tease a little bit earlier on because it's so good and it balances out the track so much. Natty?
I mean, I think especially with the stereo field thing. I mean, we'd love to think that all parts of our body are identical if they come in pairs. But it's often the case that everyone's ears are ever so slightly different, which is why it makes it harder to focus on these nuances. We don't really perceive our left ear and our right ear as being different, or my eyes, for example, because our brains often compensate for it. But that compensation is actually a bias, which is what makes stereo imaging tools so important, because they don't have that limitation. Mm-hmm. They are just a visual representation of how everything actually is.
Yep. Visualizers. Important.
The other thing I think with this track, I really love the bass sounds and the overall slamming of the drums and everything. But I think the way it's mixed right now, it makes it hard to define a core melody. Like, it's a really melodic track, but no one specific melody stands out to the point where it'd be hard to really have someone, if hum it back to you. If you're like, okay, well, what's the chorus of my song sound like? You want to have something that just stands out a little bit more above everything else so that people can say, oh, that's the melody for that song. That's the bit that I remember all the time, no matter what anything else happens. Because we don't tend to perceive bass melodies the same way.
Yeah, it's the drunk girl test, right? It's like, does the drunk girl come out of the club humming your tune? Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
All right, everybody, buckle up. This track is 1 minute long, and the image is best hard bass. And the track is called Run, Jump, and Hide. So I think that's what we're supposed to do right now. Oh, that cymbal was so loud. All right. Oh my god. Oh. Why did you wait till the end for that big bass note? Where was that?
Oh my god.
Where was that bass note like the entire time? Oh my gosh. Well, that was interesting. Yeah, I turned us back on because I thought it was just too funny and it actually added something to the song. I'm not sure if that's a style. I feel like I sound like a complete jerk no matter what I say. I'm not sure if that's a style. To me, it kind of sounds like a meme. I don't really know what to say. The only thing I would say is stylistically or not, that crash cymbal is hurting me. Yes, got smacked over the head. Natty, say something.
I mean, yeah, that cymbal is way too loud. I mean, I've actually heard music like this across the web. A lot of it's very popular in Slavic areas. I mean, like, they have the whole Russian hardcore bass sort of hardcore meme. Like, there is a bit of a meminess to it in some ways. You know, it's not meant to be taken seriously. It's meant to be everyone's being a bit silly and having a good time. But that doesn't mean there aren't rules in place. And right now, at least, this does feel very much unfinished. But I mean, obviously, it's a minute whip kind of thing. I mean, it's, I don't know. I mean, there is some donk, but it's more associated with like UK bass, whatever was it, bass house? Or
I
something?
don't know what it is.
There was definitely like a UK bass thingy which does have a bit of a donk in it, but no, this doesn't quite remind me of that. That last heavy bass note that right at the end, what you need to do, I think, is bring that forward. You don't. I mean, you've got your sort of high mid basses where it's like do 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 do.
Yeah.
But you can alternate that with another layer underneath of that heavy bass. So it's like boom, ba-da-dum, boom, ba-da-da-ba-boom, or whatever. You know, play about with it. So you need that heaviness to really make this work.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
A bass.
you know, yeah, you need the bass to make bass music.
Well, it was bizarre because right at the end there was like that big bass.
Yeah, that
blip.
note needs to come forward and everything needs to revolve around it.
But why did you?
So it's like,
I don't know. I think.
I mean,
I think we've given that one enough airtime. I think you can, put some bass in it, put a donk in it, take that cymbal down. All right, Skywalker, let it drop.
Let it drop. Let it drop.
All right, so this is Skywalker Let It Drop. Yeah, so some really nice melodies. I'm enjoying hearing the melodies, but there's something a little bit bare about it for me. I think like the sounds themselves need to evolve for me. Like this part is actually really cool, but I still want to hear a little bit of textural variance, I think. I don't really know how to describe. What do you think, Natty?
I mean, I think this section in particular would actually have been a good chance to introduce some newer sounds. Like, I mean, I don't know, it's not quite a Hoover, not quite a whistle lead sort of sound. That one there, obviously we kind of heard it before earlier in the track. It'd have been a really good opportunity to maybe introduce something a bit more either saw wave based or square based or something that sort of, you know, has a similar sort of long sustained sound but a different kind of timbral texture to it. The melodies I think are right. I agree. I think it's just a case of adding additional complexity to your sound design just to keep it going. This song actually had a good example of one of the things we were trying to suggest for one of the other songs tonight. That break was genuinely well done because it didn't fade out completely.
Yeah.
I think that was a good choice there, where you sort of kept the pads going and the little LARPs and things that kept our attention. Although I think it could do with, again, just being a little bit broader. You know, you have it's again just building on what you've got. Don't change the arrangement here. Just keep increasing the amount of layering you're doing, I think, here.
Yeah, and I do like this lead, as Takeoff 796 is saying in the chat, that the bendy lead. I think that little bend, that portamento, that gives it that texture that we are talking about, right? That just that like interesting little wobble, that variation. St. Mercury, big shouts out to you who started out today. No worries if you are working, you can always roll back later and watch it on the video of the day. But yeah, really enjoying everything. There's definitely a lot of hard styles today. This is very intense. It kind of makes me feel like I'm like on a marathon at a festival, which is not a bad thing because God knows how long it's been since I've been to that. So yeah, I think next up we got Raver Mux doing a track called Resistance. And it seems like more hardstyles coming. Okay. All right, well, like all trance, this is like a 6-minute song, so we can start our reviewing. Oh, this is always happening. Every time I'm like, okay, 3 minutes has gone by and it needs to evolve. It's like finally it starts evolving. So, all right, I'll give you the breakdown.
This is a vibe. I like this bit.
The mystery of life isn't a problem to solve, but a reality to experience. A process that cannot be understood by stopping it. We must move with the flow of the process. We must join it. We must flow with it.
All right. Does that kick sound kind of like flangey to you? Like to me, like
It's a little bit, yeah.
yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
sure entirely why though.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know if it's a stylistic thing because I've definitely heard that like it seems like a very common thing. Maybe it's a stylistic thing. So I apologize because I don't know if I'm qualified to give feedback on these styles because I'm definitely less familiar with them. But I have noticed a pattern after hearing a lot of this style tonight. It's weird how it seems to be a pattern, right? It's like 1 week we get a lot of D&B, 1 week we get a lot of dubstep, and then this week it's like psytrance week. And this is definitely the thing I am the least experienced at. Like I said, I'm a little bit of an ADD type of person, so when I walk by a festival stage like this, I tend to walk by, do something else, and then I come back and I'm like, but it sounds the same. But I know that the point of trance is literally the word trance, right? You're supposed to go into this hypnosis, you're supposed to remain there, it's supposed to evolve kind of gradually. And I think that as usual, my breakdown is the breakdown is my favorite part. Why I cannot talk today. Breakdown is my favorite part. The ethereal places, the synths, the plucks, everything came out, and there are some great plucks in the rest of it, but they're a little bit drowned out. So I personally, and this is like I said, maybe invalid advice because I am not a stylistic expert on this, but I would love to hear those ethereal sounds a little bit sooner, even just like a tiny, even just at the end of a 16 bar pattern, like a little like in the beginning, just to hint at us. And I know that techno and trance are supposed to be repetitive. I totally get that, but I think that there are subtle ways that you can evolve and still remain that hypnosis, like I said. So I don't know. It's a fine line, right, Natty?
I mean, I agree. I mean, Feng Shui said can barely hear the play pluck. I mean, I think it definitely needs to be brought out more as well. I mean, even if not necessarily earlier, because that's you can go either way on that one. I think with this sort of tune, but when it is there, we need to hear it, especially since it is a nice sound. And it plays off a lot of your other elements. It's the only thing that kind of brings the more offbeat component to the whole song. So I mean, because everything else is really rigid, and it has a little bit of a delay and a reverb going on it as well, so it moves around a little bit more. So I do think that we need some more of that to be brought up in your mix, whether that's turning everything else down a little bit apart from your bass because that occupies a different space, or just turning it up itself by itself. I don't know, because I mean you could do either. It would basically be the same thing at that point.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of anything. The problem with it as well, when you get to tracks like this, it's sometimes hard to remember how it started from how you got there, especially with a track that changes up midway.
Yeah.
So I mean, the other thing would be to try and work out how you can seed more hints that change is coming.
Exactly, like some people in the chat said, do a little bit of dubby delay stuff in the earlier, tease it. Like I was saying, the same thing, like even just a tiny little like as a fill. It doesn't, repetitive but with a story. Thank you, Safi. And everybody, I think, is in agreement here. So we're going to keep moving because we got a few more, and we don't want to keep up Natty all night because he has to work tomorrow. So we're going to keep a radio pace going on. We have user at Takeo77 in a track called Ominous. Ooh, I gotta say, whatever these big impacts are, you're very Hollywood composer. I'm liking those. Like those are a great moment when you kind of take it down to this. Really good. I mean, I think a lot of people are saying this is taking me back to 2012, 2013. Definitely, this 2013 was the year that I toured 180 days in 1 year. It was the most touring I've ever done in my life. Like, it was pretty ridiculous too. And I just remember like every place I went hearing stuff like this, no matter what country I was in, whether I was in Santiago, Chile, or Montreal, Canada, or Maui, Hawaii, I was hearing this kind of sound. True story. And yeah, I think that in this kind of thing, it's interesting because you have so much variety in the bass, but yeah, you have to change it up even more, because in that second drop, I liked how it got different later, but the first part of it was still kind of the same pattern. And I do think that you could do just a little bit more to kind of blend them, like that first, here you go with the beatboxing, that first bwah, 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 bwah. I think that having that all be the same patch gets a little monotonous, because you change them up so much after that that it's almost a little bit of like a collage, but then the first part is all the same. So I think maybe you can balance that out by overall changing them a little bit less frequency, but not like not changing it in the first section and then changing it constantly in the second. I think that evening out the patches, and as Evelyn says, cloning your patches a little more often. So that's another easy technique. You can just copy the patch and change it just a little bit so that it's similar and it's not jarring, but it gives the listener an idea that something is changing, right? You know what I mean, Nutty?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the other thing I think is the high end is a little bit harsh in places, to the point where you have the screechy basses and then the hats are trying to compete against them. To basically turn all your high end down a little bit, just a few decibels. One of the things you could do perhaps with your crashes, rather than having them all sit in the central space the same way that your screechy basses do, have it so that they have some sort of stereo movement perhaps. You could duplicate them and have it so we get a bit of a crash on either ear. Or you could have it so that it ping pongs between each with a flanger, or you could stick a chorus on it, or just, something to nudge it out of the way of your screechy bass. It means it doesn't need to be quite so loud, and you can still get the same effect without blowing everyone's ears out with the high end at the same time.
Yeah, totally agreed. But yeah, that was the other thing I was going to say is overall the mix was very sharp, and this is something that can happen with over limiting, like sometimes when you over limit your whole mix, the high end gets pushed really, really loud, and then it's like it's painful. Like I turned my mix down a couple of times, but it's not like the whole thing was too loud. It was just that sharp, like 3K, make 1 to 3K, maybe up to 5, it depends, but it just gets a little screechy. So something that you can do kind of in the mastering process is use an EQ before the limiter, but just be careful if you're going to use the EQ on your master. Make sure that it's a linear phase EQ, because linear phase EQs do not have the phase issues that normal EQs do, because normal EQs use phase on purpose. However, you don't want to use them over an entire master project. So, I would maybe like work on your individual elements as well, but try putting a linear phase EQ on your master like before the limiter, and just pull the high end down bits so it has room to come back up without hurting you. Yeah. All right. So next up is Raindrop. There's a Dropbox link. Yes, it's working today. Yay. Okay.
Yay.
Technology is on our side right now. Okay. Wait, I better not jinx it. Please forgive me. This track is called Widowmaker.
Oh.
Oh.
Spooky.
Your balls to drop? No, it's not fear. I just want to savor your fall. Yeah? Well, then I'll make sure I'm tasty for you. Bring it on!
Oh, wow. Well, this goes on for another 3 minutes, so
Really?
oh my gosh, I'm really impressed actually by this frequency. I know we were talking about the brown note last week. Well, this is kind of like,
The brown song?
this is like a night of really spicy food, I think. I mean,
Someone comparing it to the Transformers movies. That is exactly the sort of sound design they use in those movies.
oh, yeah, this is really. I mean, I like it. I think it's super original. Like, it's like it's almost making me physically uncomfortable ripping through the sub pack. It's sort of like pulsing in and out, like the alien is about to burst out from my stomach. And it's really intense, but it's weird. Okay, you have a lot of good frequency sweeps, but I feel like I really would want a heavier, stronger, just at some points. Like, I understand what you're trying to do, like you're trying to really like sweep up and down, but there's just a couple points where I want it to kind of be like, boom, right? And it doesn't ever kind of sit there enough to just grab that. Yeah, as Rags would say, not something I would have in a playlist for casual listening. Natty, you do some metally stuff sometimes. So what do you?
I mean, I think with it as well, the vocal samples themselves are actually harsher than the mix of everything else. So I definitely have a look at de-essing them a bit more, because it's almost distracting when you've got all this Foley-esque sound design going on, and then the vocals come in. It's like they're living in a different space entirely. So I would look at the high end on those in specific, because it's just not quite there. Vocals are hard though, so it's like, you know, I get why you're not quite nailing it immediately. I mean, I find them tricky too. The other thing I think is I would like to have more space. It's like right now we've been at what, 2.5 minutes now of just effectively the same
6
sort of
minutes.
intensity.
This has been 6 minutes.
But like since the last break.
Oh yeah.
You know,
4
the
minutes.
the first time round where you had got into this really crazy metal kind of industrial vibe, and the minute I thought, oh, okay, I really need a rest here, you wound it down, and you were just on the edge of pushing it too far. But now when you get into the second area, it's just constant, And while your sounds themselves are super variable, they all occupy the same sort of energy level. And sometimes that is just a case of literally choose a couple of points every so often to just cut things out, let one or two sounds shine a little bit more by themselves, and then have everything slam back in. You can do that a couple of ways, have it just immediately cut back in, like, really dramatic, because this is a cinematic thing, so you could do that, you've got impact already. Or you can do the whole reverse sample, reverse reverb trick on this one of them. So they both, they're both doing the same thing, but a slightly different way. But either way, I think this could do with giving your listener a little bit of a break every so often. Like, just more so. That last 4 minutes is really hard to get through.
Yeah, exactly. I think some space, even some ambient, because but one thing I really do love the sound design too. I would love to know like what techniques you use, like how you kind of made those sounds. Like it sounds to me like a lot of like resampling, but I think, yeah, I would love to have an ambient. It doesn't even have to be melodic, just something that has space and texture and has that same weird energy that you have, but just gives us a little bit of breathing room. So
yeah, it makes us appreciate it more.
Exactly. All right. Well, next we got Zalion. I love names that start with X. They're the best. So this is called You're Not Alone.
I'll have to change my name.
Oh, I needed this right now. Okay, that was just beautiful. And you know what's nice? We've kind of been giving this feedback a lot tonight about creating texture variety and timbre and filtering and doing things to create tension. And I think that that song was a really beautiful demonstration of a lot of those things. Like it had some movement, it had some really, really lush filtering in that breakdown that was like varied, but it also had fullness. So I didn't feel like sometimes when people filter too much and they don't balance it out, it just sounds like something's wrong with the song. You're like, oh, did I lose this? But this was not like that at all. This was really nicely filtered. The melodies were really emotional and meaningful. And yeah, it's interesting because somebody said, oh, I almost didn't want it to get more energetic. I think that this would be like a good candidate to have a down tempo version because it almost like it has the potential to just be a really beautiful, like kind of acoustic-y down tempo or ambient song as well. What do you think, Natty?
I'm in agreement there. And I do have a couple of points to note. I mean, Imagine Here actually picked up on one of the things I picked up early on. The only thing I'd like to nitpick is maybe swap the snare in the main section with a sample that's more body. Maybe it just needs some compression to shape it. Now, what I've noticed there is you're using the same snare sample in all sections of the song. It's a really stereo snare. It's like you've cut out the entire middle of the snare. So it's not really that it needs more body specifically, it needs more mono in it. One of the things in a real drum kit that a drummer can do is effectively play drums in different ways. You know, they've got their stick and they can hit the snare in however they feel like. So you don't have to stick to one snare sample for your entire song. You can create a couple of different variations of that snare. So I definitely have a more mono-compatible snare during your main. And then when that kick comes in, yeah, have it stereo. It actually fits really well together because it's like they're glued together. And they stay out of each other's way, but they're one unit. So that's a good thing. But before that, when the kick isn't so present, then you need to make up the difference.
Yeah.
The other thing would be during the final climax. Your lead sound, your lead sound is too quiet. I'm not saying that you need to make that specific sound louder, because obviously that's the original chorusy sort of lead sound. Maybe it's worth stacking another layer up and changing your voicing ever so slightly, so that you increase the power of that lead sound, because that final climax should really feel big, and everything else sounds big except for the most important bit, your lead melody.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That could have been a little bit stronger for sure, but such a nice feeling. Such a nice feeling. No, it's, you know what's funny? It's weird because it's not even like I'm speaking Spanish that much, but I think just from learning what Spanish equivalents are for English words, now I'm starting to get weird with my English. Like, because that's what when you say like fuerza, like with force, like now I'm starting to do like saying that in English and people are like, what? Why would you use that word? Yeah. I'm just going to end up one of those in between languages. We have an exciting moment here. We're about to play somebody's very first production.
Woo!
We had that moment with Josh a couple weeks ago. This is Will Waves. It says, this is my very first production. This is just the beginning of a tropical journey for me. Get a nice drink, lay down on the beach, and enjoy the sunset.
I would like to introduce
House music. That's right.
Oh, got the applause at the end of the track. All right. All right. Yay. Give it up for Will Wave. This is the first track ever. Nice. You know what? We should have like a sound bank for this show now. We should both have sound palettes that we can just press with air horns and clapping and stuff. Congratulations, Will. I mean, as everyone said, for a first track, that is awesome. Really, really cool. And I think you should just keep at it. It's really hard to give you detailed feedback at this stage because, there's a lot of like little things that you just learn from taking time and mixing things over and over again. But I would just say keep experimenting. Rag says my first production sounded like a remedial mess sponsored by Fisher Price. Whoever this is off to a great start. Yeah. Amazing job. Natty, you have any thoughts and
It
comments?
actually reminds me a little bit of how I approached my first track way back in 2014 now. It sounds a bit like you're just sort of slamming cool stuff together and hoping it fits, which is a totally valid way of starting out, I think. The next stage I'd suggest would be, if you want to go the sort of more sample heavy route, it'd be to start playing with individual samples so that you can learn how to create the variety that often spices up the track. I wouldn't worry yet necessarily if you want to do that about the entire track because this is overwhelming and a bit crazy. So you can go and have a look and load it up in a sample editor of some kind. I don't know what DAW you're using, but most of them come with sample players that you can use to trigger it. You might even be loading it up in one already. And just start experimenting with seeing what different effects do to that sample. So that then you can sort of get a feel for what the tools in your kit are. So, see what if a reverb, if I turn it all the way up, what does that sound like? If I play with my automation lanes, can I make it go weird and funny? And obviously you want to keep it fun and low key. So the other way would be stripping things back rather than focusing on slamming as many samples as you can. Have a look at playing with MIDI more and laying out a strong song structure. So again, don't worry about mixing or sound design in that case. Just see, okay, how can I take listeners on a journey? Because right now what you've got here is sort of a mishmash thing that kind of just does one thing and it doesn't change anything. It's a really good start, and you just have to choose which aspect of that idea you want to develop further.
Absolutely. Interesting conversation in the chat I want to join in on. An interesting poll that Rags is starting. How old were you guys when you started your production journey? For me, started when I was 12. Wow, Rags, 12. That's crazy. And I think that's more normal now because people are like, I actually did some summer camps for kids. And, it's basically because I am now, let's face it, I am old enough to have children. So those children, other people like me who had the kids, they grew up and now they produce, which is crazy. So Feng Shui said early on when his piano music production when I was 12 or 13, y'all are crazy. Is that you too, Nettie?
I started at 18.
Oh, thank you. Finally. Evelyn was 18.
I was too broke to have my own computer before 17, and then it was only a year later I got the software to even think about starting it, and it was Magic's Music Maker, because I'm that basic.
Yeah. 5Jesus is saying 4-track cassette when I was 16. Thank goodness somebody else like me that is old. Okay, so here's the deal. I started going to raves and stuff when I was like 13 or so or something like that. I started singing with DJs when I was 14, but when I was 14, I swear it wasn't that long ago, but music technology moves really fast, okay? Back then, if you wanted to produce music, you needed to spend $4,000 to get a sampler with 8 megabytes of memory. So you could basically record a loop, and then you had to render it out, and then clear it and do it again. And I didn't have $4,000 when I was 14, or when I was 15, or when I was 16. I don't think I had $4,000 till I was like in my 30s, because I'm a lifetime artist. But anyways, when I was 18 or 19, that's when like Fruity Loops, and yes, I'm going to call it Fruity Loops because that's what it was called. Fruity Loops was out, Rebirth was out, and then I was finally able to do stuff electronically. My brother used to play with Fruity Loops and make like the worst train wreck hard-styled 220 BPM meme beats. And then I kind of took over and was playing with Cubase and Nuendo. So nice variety of ages in the chat. Thankfully, there's some other people who started a little bit later. But yeah, y'all are crazy starting when you're 12. It's so crazy. It's just nuts. I mean, I did start DJing and touring really young, okay? So that's something. I guess some people, now that's crazy to me that people go the other way. There's people like you, Natty, that are making like dancey tracks that haven't been to a show. And that's so crazy to me because that's how I learned to make tracks, was going to shows and dancing. Barrett's saying he played instruments at 2, started mixing live front of house at age 12. What is wrong with all you people?
They're all overachievers, that's what.
Should be in school. Okay, so Bran Muffs is supposed to be next, but Bran Muffs' link is not working. So I'm going to skip to Patrick. I'm skipping Cookie because he went to bed. So we'll get to him if we have time, but I think he'll understand. We got Patrick next, a track called A Certain Way.
In our house, the music is first, the dancer is second, and the DJ is third. We repay our DJ when he lights us up with energy. We give back to our DJ through our own currency that we call sweat. That's not how this was built. In the roots of it all, there were no big bright lights. It was a big dark room, a vibe, energy, a system. A sound system that brought the music to life. And it was filled with people who enjoyed the same style and the same music. They all treated themselves like a family when they were in the room. They all embraced each other because they embraced the music. Nothing more, nothing less.
All right, really cool stuff here, Patrick. I really dig this like basement kind of chill vibe, and the storytelling that is so classic to have a deep beat, a deep kind of subby sort of synth, and then a narration. But I feel like that was just the first half of a track for me. Like in this point, I want the breakdown to happen, and then I want there to be a turnaround, and then what I'm expecting that I want to hear is like a deep bass section where it's just like the boom 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 boom, right? And then like maybe a little percussion on top, a little crispy, tasty thing. And you can keep that driving beat and you can keep all that like deep groove, but just focus, like taking the chords away and just letting it kind of roll out. I think that's the next thing that like everyone would want to hear. So, you know what I mean, Natty? It's like, I just expecting that.
And it could even be possible in places to go a little bit more techno with that. There's the rolling bass pattern. Obviously, you're playing with a slightly different sound palette, but it doesn't mean you can't borrow a few of the tricks. So you could have sections where it just goes into a ba-da-boom, 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 ba-da-boom. Dun, dun, ba-da-boom, 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 ba-da-boom.
Someone needs to make beats out of this.
So I mean, you do have room to play about with this in really subtle, fun kind of ways. People are asking what genre this is. Right now, as of 2022, everyone's calling this stuff lo-fi house, but it's really what deep house was kind of doing in the 90s. Mm-hmm. It's definitely having a revival right now. Yeah, Ross from Friends definitely was the first example I was thinking of, someone who's bringing this back. So I mean, there is an audience out there for it, which is good. And I think for the most part, you definitely nail the sound and the whole energy of that genre. It is just a case of really doing that playing twist thing that Isha suggested, because I think that would turn us from a interesting track into a really good track.
Yeah.
I mean, it could even be a case of go full on and introduce that old 90s house piano or an organ or something. If you're going to lean into it, it might be worth really leaning into it.
Yeah, exactly. No, I just think we need a break from those chords just to make it breathe a little bit, because I like the drum groove and I like that hypnosis, and now I just want some space. But yeah, play with it. Why not? Cool.
Yes.
Brands
Stabby 90s Yamaha
Stabby
piano.
90s Yamaha piano. Yeah. I mean, I love that it's funny because the same thing happens in fashion. My mom told me this when I was a kid, and she was just always like, oh, if you hold on to your clothes enough, they just come back in style like 20 years later. Ha, 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 ha. And, this is one of those funny things about getting old is I now am starting to experience this. Like, and, like at Primark, you come in or any of the H&M, and then you're just like, what is this, like Clueless the movie? Like right now there's all this grunge and plaid stuff, and I'm like, this is the stuff in 94. I'm seeing
a lot of those dual fabric things come back into, because since I work at Primark, I actually see some of it. I really don't actually personally like it, but I also kind of find it hilarious, because you got like a shirt, and on one side it's like bright green, sort of a mint green, and on the other side it's something completely different. I'm thinking, who wants this? But back in the 90s, everyone wanted this.
It's a real saying, all kids in Stockholm have Nick Carter haircuts. No, that cannot come back. We have like technology and better scissors now. Come on. No, just no. Oh gosh, Europeans sometimes. Why? All right. Bran, I still can't get your link to work. I don't know why. I'm going to just go to this Vibranium track by Kepler 452b. Wow, I'm gonna let you go first on that one, Natty.
So I actually had a thought. I think overall the general atmosphere and the progression is really good for this sort of grimy, dubsteppy sort of like D&B sound. There was a moment though where I thought that you could have played about with your and then go back to voicing again. You have the boom boom ding 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 thing. That little plucky sort of sound that's in the background. It'd have been nice if you'd occasionally alternated it so it had, you have that original octave which is at the dun, 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 and then you can go up an octave occasionally where it's dun, 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 dun. Sorry, but it's just lots of little, you've already got a lot of dynamics with your drums, so it makes sense to continue expressing that dynamics in every other element. Breaks aren't just drum breaks. You can use the you can use your melodic elements in the same way, where everything's as expression a lot of producers who came from drumming have, which is basically everything's a fill. You can literally treat everything like a fill, where you're just constantly introducing all these minor mutations. But it also goes a little bit back to classical orchestral theory, where sometimes they would just extend a piece through, especially if they were playing a piece that had multiple movements, by just constantly riffing on the same components and changing the voicing of them. So they'd move them up and down and up and down. And it just keeps everyone a little bit off balance and increases that tension a little bit more before you actually change things up. So, that's one area where I just have a little bit of work just to make sure you're entirely happy with the level of tension that you've introduced into your song.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that the really glitchy percussion is super original and super cool, and I like it. But I almost want in the second half when it comes back, I want to break from it, and I just want to hear like the kick and snare. And it doesn't necessarily have to go halftime, but that could be really cool too. Just have it be like boom, ka, boom, ka. Like just give it some huge breathing space and just hear some of the stuff underneath. Because the thing is when you do anything too much, people need a break from it, and you want them to miss it. Like you want them to be like, please, like bring that back. And you have to tease them and you have to play a little bit hard to get. So I think that you have a great vibe and you have such a nice space, and just maybe vary it up with that dynamic of taking stuff out and letting just the main groove breathe, I think is the thing. So, oh my goodness. I'm having it is technical fun day. Somebody just sent me a FLAC. I'm not sure if I've never even had a FLAC on my computer. I know what it is.
Do you have VLC player installed?
I think so.
It should run FLAC, okay.
Okay, but then I have to patch it into the... Oh my God. Okay. We have to do another spontaneous patch. Let's hope I don't break anything. We are going to patch VLC. Oh, and I was going to say in the middle of this that my tech issues, my mouse is like gapping out every seconds. All right, here we go. Here's this file, and let's see. really,
It's over?
yeah. It might be a whip. Like it kind of ends just very abruptly. I really, really love the melodies, and the way that you swept that building in that space was just absolutely beautiful. Like when that sub kind of came in, I don't know if anyone was watching, but I just totally like closed my eyes, and that's the feeling of being swept away. I do think that, and this is a stylistic thing. I know that like simplistic, clean kind of sine saw, like very clear waveform type of sounds are really popular in this style. But after the intricacy and the detail and the texture of your intro, I kind of wanted a little bit more texture in those chords as well. And that could be as simple as just like light filtering on the edges just to give it some shape, or some kind of just slight texture variation, because I don't know, for me, like that just was such a great atmosphere you created that I wanted at least a little hint of that kind of complex texture in the rest of it. And once it dropped, there were so many simple parts that it was hard to have that moment back. So that's just my personal thing. But I think, as was said in the chat, this would be awesome festival music. And I have been to a lot of festivals. It's definitely something that people would just really enjoy at that key moment.
I think it was a solid mood as well. I mean, Barrett said the thunderstorm sample feels a little cliche here, to be honest. But I mean, I also think it's a little bit unnecessary beyond the immediate intro. There's a point where you're building up all your pads and your lead sounds and your bass, and the thunderstorm sound is still there, and I can hear it. It's actually really biased towards this ear, to the point where it was actually really distracting. I mean, I'd say if you want it, fine, but cut it out before before everything else gets really intense, because it doesn't need to be there. It doesn't add anything to the vibe you're going for. You've established the setting in your intro, and that's fine from us. But I mean, if you think about this from a storytelling perspective, you've got the who, what, where, when, why. So obviously your thunderstorm is establishing the what's happening. This is storm, and maybe you're in shelter, and so this is sort of everyone's cozying up for warmth together, kind of like penguins or something. And obviously then the point of the song is, well, okay, what happens to them next? We've gotten the message across that this is what's happening to them in the intro. So it's about the journey from that point. Are they going to find a safe haven, or are they going to find themselves in more trouble? Obviously it's a happy tune, so it's got a happy ending. But once you establish that point, you don't need to keep repeating that point to get any further with it. The other thing was that you were talking about the simplistic sounds. I don't think that lead sound that comes in later, the sort of fluty whistly sort of one, I don't think it quite fits at this point. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean you can't have something similar to it, but it needs to be a little bit less warbly. It's like a really sort of resonant-y sort of sound. You need something a bit, either you can go a bit lighter and have it more hollow, or you stack a couple of sounds together, give them a little bit more stereo width, and have them play off each other, so you get your notes just changing the texture of them that way. You can add complexity through just basic layering in an additive synthesis kind of way, but you haven't obviously got that yet. I mean, it's a whip, so I'm not going to judge too harshly in that regard. But I mean, I think you've got a really, really cool start here.
Yeah, I agree as well. And I mean, I think, as I said with another track, this is another one where I would love to hear like a chill version that doesn't go into that craziness. Like, I love just the atmospheres that you've created, and I think it sounds so good. So yeah, amazing job, everyone. We always have such good music. This is Feedback and Friends on ILBC. Please follow us, ILBC_TV on socials. You'll find out a little bit more about what we're all about. We're about basically just bringing community together, sharing knowledge, education, and hopefully convincing some of you all to check up live performance. But I know that before you get to the performance, you have to get to the state in production. So finally, we get to listen to Bran. They had to send me over because they're having some problems with the link. But I love the title of this. It's Manic Pinball Dream Girl. I love it.
Welcome. Break me down. Baby.
So I really like this bass and this kick. I love the bass and the kick. It's really strong and boppy. But I do think that maybe something to try would be playing a little bit with multi-band compression on the bass if you're not already doing it, because sometimes the sub is really strong and sometimes it's a little bit weak. And that's naturally going to happen as well when you're using different notes and whatnot. But sometimes just like using multi-band processing on your bass and just compressing only the low end can kind of bring it up to a more even thing. As well, I love the bass sound. It's really sick, but because it's kind of like one sound and you're using a lot of like the same sounds throughout, like including that vocal sample in the front, it would be nice to have a section maybe that's just like either really minimal, takes away the percussion and focuses on the bass and drums change a bit. Just something that takes us into a little bit of a different space, because you have like a really cool groove, but I just wanted to evolve a little bit. I don't know. What do you think, Natty?
I mean, the song that comes to my head that I think of most when I hear this is actually the Chainsmokers' #Selfie. You know, it's sort of a light parody track that's still meant to be a dance floor slammer kind of deal. The one thing I think that this could benefit from is actually tweaking your arrangement of your vocals a bit. I mean, one, your bass is far louder than them, so changing that balance a little bit might help. With multi-band compression that Isha suggested there would be useful. But the other thing is that when a person speaks or sings, they don't sing on beat. So it might be good to sit and take your samples of, you know, even when you're chopping them, and just moving them back and forth just ever so slightly out in either direction, depending on how you want it to flow, so that it's all not just hitting on the beat. It'll increase, you know, yes, it's a sample, but if it was a real studio recording, you'd get a chance to have someone record multiple takes of it. So in this case, you're artificially adding those takes. So by changing the timing, and you can even obviously volume automate it, so each iteration doesn't necessarily come in at exactly the same strength.
Oh, that's true. And well, I know how the Vital text to wavetable VST works. And so essentially you can create the wavetable, and then in order to animate it, in order to make it speak, right, you have to automate the wavetable position, right, so that it scrubs left to right, just like that stop motion animation that I always compare wavetables to. So you could vary the automation on that so that it speaks just slightly slower or slightly faster. Like that might be a way to do something that varies up a little bit more, like what Nathaniel is saying. You know what I mean? Yeah, you should try it, Natty. The Vital text to wavetable is so great. And let me just tell people about this too, and we'll probably make it plug-in of the week next week. Vital can do text to wavetable in like 20 different languages, even to the point that they have Portuguese, and Brazilian Portuguese, and you can actually hear the different accent. You know,
that's pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's really, really detailed. So I would highly recommend trying that out. It is very, very wild.
Guess I'm gonna make my laptop cry some more.
Oh, come on. A good way to pro tip, if you're using any synth like Vital or Serum and your CPU is crying, a good way is to turn down the voicings, because the more voicings you have, the more copies of the oscillator you're doing. So just sometimes you can do the economy class move where you just turn down the voicings temporarily while you're producing, and then when you're ready to do it, just like turn up the voicing and freeze the channel. That's kind of my low budget producer way because trust me, I was working on this 2017 laptop that I'm finally about to get replaced in like a month after the chip shortage gets me my new one. So I know the struggle. Turn down the voicings, Natty. That will fix you.
I mean, with normal synthesis, I found Vital's actually quite... I mean, people say they found it quite intense, but I've actually found it's okay. I mean, some of my 32-bit plugins going through Bridge are far worse. But I'm just wondering how intense this text-to-speech
It's very intense. Okay, Santiago, I don't know who you are. I hope you're around, but you're up. Fever Dreams. Wow. Well, my first compliment to you is that this is so well produced and so textural and so interesting that I didn't even notice that like 5 minutes had gone by. Like it really kept my attention because the rhythm is really unique. Yeah, there's so much to listen to about this. It's like hard for me to even kind of turn it down. Really, 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 really interesting. Really keeps my attention. There's some things with the hi-hats, but you were saying in the chat already that you fixed that already and couldn't re-upload it, so I don't need to say that. I think for me, the only thing is sometimes with this heavy percussion, I want to hear the crazy like bass wubby things. Like I think they're delicious and I really want them to come out more. So I kind of want you to give me like a section where it's just minimal. I know I've said this before, but I just, it's like, it's so good.
Is it a nice outro?
Oh my gosh, it's so...
Or is it another bridge?
No,
Is
it's
that done?
beautiful. No, really, really wonderful work. And your intro, your breakdown, your outro, all your textures are there. I think I love that percussion and I love the neuro wubs. I just think even having a moment where it's like only the bass playing, like even if it's just a turnaround at the end of 16 bars, it could just be like, like just nothing but that. That was the worst beatboxing of the night. And you tell maybe my ears are starting to turn. Natty, did you love those atmospheres as much as I did?
I thought it was a really solid progression, and I honestly wasn't able to pick out anything too major in the production. Like, nothing really stuck out as wrong or off. So I mean, that's a really, really good place to be in. I mean, yeah, I agree. It would be nice to have a section that lets your bass shine by itself just a little bit more. But on the whole, for what you've got, if you decide that that's not the artistic direction you'd like to go in, I think you're in a good place for the production, and the actual mix down is solid, and the sound design is fairly inventive for this sort of genre. I think it's a good vibe. I mean, I can't really think of anything too helpful to say to suggest improvements here, because certainly better D&B than anything I've ever come up with for that genre.
And it's really original. And like, look, I have me and D&B, we have this love-hate relationship. So if anyone goes and like, ever looks me up, they tend to get confused because sometimes they find this really old stuff and like lots of drum and bass, and then they listen to the stuff now and they go, what? That's just because I'm old and I've been around for a long time. But I spent pretty much the first 12 years of my career DJing drum and bass. I actually started out as a drum and bass MC. And so my love-hate thing with it happens because after 12 years of it, I was still hearing people doing, like the rules tend to be, or they used to be, very narrow. And so it was just like, has to have the amen breaks and they have to be kind of like this and everything is set like this. And after 12 years, I was just like, okay, I need a break, and I just walked away from it and tried to come back. And a lot of the times I would just hear people doing the same thing, but you managed to have like proper jungle breaks in a really just unique groove and progression, and the atmospherics were so well done that I really wanted
I need a break,
listen to
D&B DJ. Thank you for that, Cyril. That is...
Yeah, no, and I mean, now of course, like there's a renaissance with drum and bass, and I am finding my love for it because I think finally the old guard is sort of done, and drum and bass used to be run by a lot of these like salty British guys that just were like pub DJs for their whole lives, and then they got older and they all turned into crazy conspiracy theorists. So it's a really weird trajectory. But anyways, now there's a fresh generation of kids who are just like, I like this, and I'm not like hardwired to all these rules, so I'm gonna try halftime. I'm gonna use really modern production techniques to do cool new things. So really successful, and like everybody here is saying they would listen to it again, and I would too. And I think that's probably the biggest. And Feng Shui says I'm just genre fluid now. Yeah, me too. And I really like when you can't genre categorize something. I liked the word bass music because I like how vague that is. So yeah, and now we've got some fam coming up. We've got Rags, our own Rags. Another brief story about Rags. We actually met in person. Like a lot of times I talk to people like Nathaniel on Discord for like 5-6 years, and we've never met in person. But with Rags, I think, as far as I remember, the story is he just kind of came in and we were chatting, and I think somehow it came up that I was playing a party in Atlanta and he happened to be near there, and he was like, can I come? And I said, yeah, sure. I'll throw you guys on the guest list. It was super, super muddy that day because it was raining really hard and they didn't really like put down hay or sand or any of the stuff that you should do at an outdoor festival when it's muddy and raining. And people at the end, my challenge was, how can I get people to dance in the mud? Because that was literally what I was facing. The entire dance floor was a bowl of mud. And Rags came with his friend TJ, who had some very, very nice sneakers on. And at the end of it, TJ coached me and he was like, listen, that was so fire. I just wrecked my shoes for you, girl. And he showed me like his shoes were all just covered in mud. Oh my gosh. Good times. Rags, love you. And I really hope that we can figure out, I know you're working and stuff, but I love your energy and would love to have you on the stream in visual soon. So here's a whip of Rags called Fade.
People dying for that second chance. I hope you'll never get. Hard to keep you motivated in the time spent. Taking faithful, searching for something you'll never find. Lie on Tell me why I'm here if you can't understand. If I'm part of a master plan or if I'm just trying to feel. Paint me a perfect plot or put me inside of one. Let me enlighten some. Tell me if you get green light. Can't do it by myself when situation don't seem right. At least I acknowledge some of that. On a path where there ain't no coming back.
It's been a long time since I heard anything from Rags. Definitely a very genre fluid. I like that expression, feng shui. I've heard Rags make hip hop, make pop, and now this kind of like emo metal pop, really interesting fusion. Definitely, and it is a whip, so obviously you need to kind of go in all over, I think, on the mix, but your vocals, I think, need to be a little bit punchier, especially when you're rapping. Like with the phasey doubling thing, I think maybe you could back off a little bit on that. Or something I tell people a lot is if you want that super spread effect or any kind of heavy affected thing, put a layer of dry stuff over top of it. And even if you cut off the lows, just keep the clarity in the top. So even if it's just this part, right? Here's where I start licking the mic. Even when it's just that part, you have
100,000 people tuning in immediately.
Oh my God. Natty, we have to do that sometime.
Oh God, is that going to be our April Fool's stream?
Yeah, we're just going to get on stream for feedback and just But yeah, one channel dry, one wet, exactly. All that stuff, like just blending so that you have the clarity and you have the punch, and then you can still get that like phasey kind of far away sound. But I think that like anything where you kind of have rapping style, like percussive vocals, you need to compress them a little harder to make them punch through, especially through the drum and bass, the background, because I think everything overall could start to pump a little bit more. Like right now, everything sort of feels like it's on a plane, like the drum and bass sort of break kind of feels a little bit on one level, and then your vocals kind of on one level, and they're not really pulsing and blending together. So I think that's just a further mixing thing, like some more compression on the individual groups and stuff. But I think it's a really, really nice blend of stuff. What do you think, Nats?
I mean, I actually agree with Feng Shui a bit here. Would love to hear a breakdown session to break it up a bit. Which,
Yes,
breakdown
that
speed,
too.
break it up. Your piano line actually leaves a massively strong element to do that with. To have just the vocal and the piano together for a section, I think would be really powerful. And then you can sort of just end the 8-bar or 16-bar phrase or whatever with the kicks coming back in, and then right back to the drum and bass, like
Yeah, exactly.
kind of thing going on. Because I mean, I actually really like the piano, what it's playing. I think those chord choices are really nice. It's a very dramatic sort of song, and I would love to hear the final version of this once you've ironed out those mixing sound design kinks as well.
Yeah, me too. Oh, we're getting
It's definitely emotional.
Yes, I'm so thankful to everybody who shows us your beautiful music. We appreciate you. We love hearing it. We got Feng Shui in the house next. It has been a long time since I have heard your music, my friend, so I'm looking forward to it. This is a track called Spotlight. gorgeous atmospheres, feng shui. I really love like everything that I'm hearing in this last part. It's the granular, the texture. But yeah, I think that wow, imagine your feedback is always so spot on, and a lot of the time it's like what I was gonna say. This song slaps. It's heavy, trippy, and pretty. I think you have your elements down. Just got to refine the mix so you don't lose the bass and energy. And so I'd like to expand on that a little bit. What I'm feeling in my sub pack, and this is why, like, I swear they don't pay me or anything, but this is why I appreciate having it, is because sometimes things jump out at me that you just simply can't hear on headphones. And what I'm hearing is that your kick has some really low end resonance, and what happens on the sub pack when something has too much is it actually starts to distort. And so that kick is actually coming through on the sub pack is not only like really loud, but with a lot of energy where the bass should be. So I think that a lot of other people are talking in the chat about masking going on and low end frequencies, and it's kind of it's because of your bass basically getting in the way, like or sorry, your kick drum getting in the way because your kick has too much bass in it. So yeah, I think you don't even necessarily, you've got to be careful with high passing, because I used to do that a lot and then I ended up like doing it too sharply and losing the punch. But I would say instead of high passing, almost notching and like strategically, maybe high passing it a little bit if you're not already. But yeah, I mean, so the other thing I would say is, yeah, the bass elements definitely need to pop out more. And I think it's just cleaning up. Sometimes there's a lot of sounds that you just forget to do a low cut on, and maybe they have some low end noise, because there's definitely some bleeding that is just getting in the way of us experiencing like the true loveliness of what you're doing. And the atmos that comes in the breakdowns is so light and lovely and amazing. So I think it's just cleaning up the kick would be a really start. And then my other little pick would just be at the very beginning when you just have the synth notes. It's a little bit empty, and it's almost like you could just do the most basic reverse reverb kind of trick where you just like reverse reverb and print that and then just use it in little bits to almost be like its own fill. So you can still have the feeling of just one single sound, but it can just be like boom, 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 and then a reverse like a into the next note, and just give you a little feeling like it's building or like it's ascending. So you have so many great textures and ambience in the rest of it that I want a little bit of that when the track comes in. And yes, I mean, Barrett, Subpack does sponsor me. They don't pay me. They do give me free Subpacks. So I'm very lucky because I have broken several of them. So this one is actually on its last legs, and I'm waiting for them to come out with a new one. But because of the chip shortage, they've been super, super backed up on everything. But yeah, Feng Shui, great energy, and I would totally love to listen to this like in the forest stage of whatever festival, like in between the trees. Natty, from a non-festival perspective.
Well, I mean, for me, one of the things I noticed, which has nothing to do with whether it works as a song or not, is your there's a few moments where, because of the way your bass is sculpted right now, it actually sounds out of tune. And I think this could be solved by effectively parallel processing that bass. You'd create a second layer. What you need to do is effectively add a little bit more crunch to the upper ends of your bass. It will also help it translate better on things like phone speakers, because right now, as it stands, if I went and played this same song on my old phone or my current one, doesn't really matter at this point, because they were such small speakers, they don't have the ability to translate that sub. And so you're just going to end up with a load of missing information if anyone ever wants to play it anywhere that's not got a sound bar or a decent sound system. And that would obviously be a shame for a song like this, where it's really vibey. And you don't want to miss half the vibe.
Yeah.
Yes, you'd split the bass. So you'd have the low and then you have the mid plus the high. So, I mean, I think you just need to split that bass a little bit. If you are doing it, you need to make it a bit more.
Or maybe distort that split that you already have, because like he says, he's adding an extra octave on the subs, but maybe that octave needs to have a little bit of distortion on it, like just to give it some teeth.
Yeah, get a crunch.
Yeah, good idea. Totally, I think so. Oh,
Because, yeah, just right now it's just losing itself a little bit, and you can reel it back in.
all right. So I'm going to switch around the order for a second, because I want to put Imagine last, because Imagine always sends me off to sleep so nice. But we got one more before that. We got Nate Silex. All right. wow. Oh, that was very big room. That was like the biggest room that I think I've heard. Well, maybe that was just the synth. The synth was indeed very loud, and maybe like the mix is a little bit overcompressed. It was a little pumpy, but I did like the feeling of the pumpiness, but just maybe a little bit too much. Like, and as some other people said, I think the high end was a little bit much. Oh no, we lost Natty again. What is going on? This is the day of tech issues more than usual. We always have one or two, but today we are having 5 or 6 or 10. It's weird. I think I talked to the developer because the developer of this technology is actually really cool, and he just like answers questions. And I talked to him, and he was just like, "Oh yeah, we don't really know what's going on, but OBS is the new version is kind of buggy." I think Nathaniel is trying to come back. We have only one track left, Nathaniel. Oh my gosh. Well, I know that Nathaniel has a lot to say. Come on, Nathaniel. Oh well. Oh, he's gone. What a day. Thanks for sticking with us. I'm going to wait a few more seconds. Nathaniel can hear and see me, but we can't hear and see him. Well, you know what? We're so close to done that, Natty, maybe you can just type your feedback on the track, and I'm going to just close out with Imagine. And if you can get back in here, that's great. But the internet is just being weird. I don't understand the internet. I love the internet. It's a great invention, but somehow it's not cooperating with us. So yeah, it's being real weird. Natty, feel free to leave text feedback in the chat. In fact, things are just, oh, he's there. He's there.
That's so weird. I mean, it was working on my end, so I'm not sure where.
I think there's either a problem with OBS or just something is, I don't know, the full moon or who knows. So sorry, give your feedback now.
I mean, I liked the piano lines. Clearly some thought and care has been gone into programming those, so actually it does sound mostly like a real person has played them. The other thing I think that does need to be fleshed out a bit is obviously your energy levels. A lot of that comes down to the mix down, for sure. It's like, if you want to have it transcend the sort of just basic, this is a vlogger video kind of vibe, you have to make it so that your change ups are more dramatic, so that the more hype bits feel more hype. A lot of that can be done in the stereo field. I think that would probably be a good place to start experimenting. You know, you can have things back from side to side a little bit and make it so that we can literally sway in time to the beat. You know, you can actually do that in your sound palette. So that then we're really well and truly vibing and not just sitting there having a drink.
Yeah, exactly. Well spoken. Well, I'm glad I got you back for our closer, Natty. Sorry, I don't know what is up with the internet. It just wants to keep us apart, but we'll be together someday. Speaking of keeping us apart, this track by Imagine is called Need My Love. I need your love.
I need your love, Fisha.
I need your love, Natty. Don't leave me. This has been Feedback and Friends on LBC. We do this every Wednesday at 8 p.m. UK time. And we do this sometimes, at other times we do lots of other programming and fun things, but essentially we are just creating really fun events, workshops, panels, and competitions. So please, the best thing that you can do in return for us is just keep tuning in, subscribe to things. Zavi, you should be in bed, you bad man. I just told everyone you were in bed. All right, we got one more track to close the night. As I said, thanks, Imagine. Thanks, everyone who submitted music. Hope to see this. Oh, what determines if we do this on the weekend? Well, usually we do other types of programming. We do other shows like Tech Invaders, Print My Live, and there's a Sampling Sunday show going on with Unity of Noise. I have done some feedbacks on Saturday, but I wasn't getting more people from North America, which was sort of the reason I was doing it, because I was thinking everyone's at work or whatever. But Imagine says, this is a simple whip. I just started and would love some ideas. All right, we will give you ideas. And Zavi, go to bed. King of Vibes, Imagine, just taking us to such a nice place to close off the night. I always love like the energy that you have. It's so fun. It's so like it gives me what I expect, but not in a boring way, in a very satisfying way. And I really love those little pitch bends. I can definitely see that this is a whip, and I can't wait to see where it goes. I hope you bring it back when you do more, because we do that too, by the way. If y'all are working on tracks and you want feedback and then you want to come back a couple weeks later and bring them back, we're always happy to check it out. For this, I just want to hear like those chords expand and go crazy. And I mean, a couple of ways to do it. Maybe like almost like open up into some arps. And by open up, I kind of mean like sometimes I'll sort of blend two elements so they're like, it's almost like cross fading, but not quite cross fading. There's a couple plugins that I've tried that are pretty interesting, like Melda M Morph, that actually allows you to do that, like to take sound A and sound B and then automate like a spectral morphing between the two sounds. I think something like that would be really cool, so that you have the same chord, but like twisting and morphing between like two different sounds. So M-Morph is like that, and there's another plugin that's like that that's not coming to mind. But also, since you do use Ableton, sometimes what I'll do is also create sort of octave ups and downs within chords if they're audio samples by using transpose automation in the clip and then putting the clip into a different mode of warping. So like instead of like complex pro, which is what you would probably want it on for clean chords or complex, I'll put it on like texture or tone, and then I'll automate the pitch up and down, like the transpose, like an octave up and down. So it'll be like boom, 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 boom. Like it's terrible. My throat is so dry. But I think automating weird stuff like transposition and playing with like stuff within the warp modes can give you like interesting textures within the same sample, or blend between two. I just want to hear, because those chords are really good, but obviously because they just keep repeating and they don't really like unfold or filter, they need to go somewhere now. So I would also, some sparkly arps or some really like high-end breathy kind of panning, luscious atmospheric noise sweeping across the intros and the breakdowns and just giving us that, this is going to be the first time it's been said tonight, which is very unusual, ear candy.
Ear candy.
Little.
I guess we're not getting drunk tonight.
That's our feedback drinking game. Yeah. Synaptic Morph. Thank you. That is exactly the other one that I was thinking of. And you know what? I got them both because I was so excited about the concept at the time. And I will say that I do use the Melda one a bit more when I use that, but just because the interface seems to be a little bit more intuitive. But Synaptic also makes some other crazy plugins. They make a pitch map, which allows you to take like an entire song and remap every note that's being played in it. So you can just take pop songs and do the most disgusting things with them. It's pretty funny. But anyway,
Elastic Audio is also great.
Ooh, Elastic Audio. Yeah.
That's also one of theirs.
Any suggestions for you, Natty?
Actually, based around that idea of extreme pitch automation, the bit where the chord goes, doom, I would love to have a point where that goes through the floor. Like, I want to be taken down to the basement. Mm-hmm. And then you can essentially carry on an entirely new tonality from there. So you can go a few times where you go, and then you can maybe get the next one go even lower. Or you could go, or you could just have that one be the one that goes, boom. And, so we can really... you have an opportunity here to really go crazy on the making everyone feel the sub, and what you've got there already has the device to facilitate that transition, I think. So that'd be something worth exploring. And then I don't know, you could play about with this sort of track. You can pretty much go anywhere you want with it. I mean, because it's sort of house is quite a flexible genre, and you could change it to a more techie sort of direction, or you could play about with things like distortion, where you can automate the level of distortion to ramp it up, or just basic filter transitions the way Deadmau5 might do it with his sort of more techno-influenced minimal stuff. I mean, I don't know. It's as far as any other suggestions, I've basically been trying to suggest how you write your song, and obviously it's not really fair. But so that transition suggestion is kind of the best one I've got right now that takes as much of the ideas you already have present.
Very good advice. With that, we have been going for a marathon 3 hours, 47 minutes. Not quite our longest, but definitely one of the longest ones here. Rags just said it in the chat. Yeah, I mean, we do this. We love you. We want to give you as many of you feedback as possible. Sorry for the few people that came in near the end, but look, if you want to get first in on the thing, basically every week at the end of the show, I clear the queue and it opens for next week. So if you already have something and you want to get it in there, you can actually, it's pretty much like 5 minutes after this is over, you can put your name at the top and get in first or whatever. But we do this generally for around 3 hours, and we go a little longer when there's so many people like you coming in. Shouts out to Nathaniel, who has to work tomorrow.
All day, and I've got a birthday party to go to in the evening tomorrow, so
My
it's gonna be
goodness.
mad.
Thank you so much. You are the goat, as the children say. Been another episode of Feedback of Friends. Thank you so much on ILBC app, ILBC TV. I can't even say my own show anymore. That's how delusional I am. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a wonderful, wonderful night.